أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Please recite us loud salawat to incorporate all the Anbiya, the A'imba, the Awliya, the believers up until Qiyamah from the time of the creation's existence and origin point in our adha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. A second salawat to allow for a further refinement of our intellect and our attention so we could direct ourselves towards Abu Abdullah once again today. And a third salawat for the hastening of the reappearance of one who will direct the attention of all of existence towards its source like never before. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We talked about the idea that we are not the painting, actually we're the painter. See that? And we've been assigned to create a painting. And this assignment is unique. We've been granted some tools to craft this painting. And the swindle lies in us forgetting that the painting is from us, but for the owner. We said that active attentiveness towards this idea of who the owner of the painting is ensures that that particular painting is in line with that which the owner wants. We went further and said that we have an inner canvas to paint, a family canvas to paint, and a sociopolitical canvas to paint. That in the inner canvas, we have the occurrence of the anger faculty and the occurrence of the shahwa faculty, and our job becomes to raise these two toddlers to the point of transition. And as they come out to the point of transition, as we've raised them, that's how they come out. One time we're raising the source of them, and another time we're raising the appearances of them. One time we're working on our anger faculty in its presence within us. Another time we're raising the anger faculty in its individual occurrences within us. In a very similar manner, one time we're working on the presence of the desire faculty, right? And that assists us in managing the appearance of the desire faculty too. In a very similar manner, in the family unit, we have the existence of the position which represents Allah's Jamal and the existence of the position which represents Allah's Jalal. And there too, they're in charge of raising the needs of the various individuals towards the point of intiqal, transition. Transitioning into what? A newer family unit. Here too we see that this particular transition has two ways of looking at it. Sometimes you're looking at the positional difficulties, the presence of them. And another time you're looking at the specific occurrences of them in that particular day. Understanding a deeper perception, understanding and having an experience of a deeper perception regarding the positional needs allows us to cater for and help us in directing and growing the appearance of those needs today. I know my child, generally speaking, with the lack of sleep, is very difficult for them to control their behavior and actions. See that? That generalized thought regarding a positional weakness of my child, right, helps me help the positional appearances of that particular child's needs too. Yeah. As a child, I have to manage that which he brings to the table. When I understand the patterns, the presence of them, it helps me look out for them and mitigate the occurrences of that particular pattern. If I don't have an understanding of the patterns, every occurrence itself becomes a new anomaly. You see it? But with the understanding of patterns, my heart doesn't go up and down as his anger faculties display goes up and down. You see it? Calmness is found in the oneness, we said. Remember? Ala bi dhikrillahi. When you find the oneness, the pattern, the presence of that which you're supposed to raise, that allows for you to understand the appearances and then act in your best capacity with regards to them. Salawat, please. Today we start the journey of talking about two other faculties, and this ties with the third canvas, the canvas of the socio-political one. The responsibilities there. You see, the directives in helping the anger faculty and desire faculty is done through two types of perceptions. Sometimes we go about it through nadara, nadar. Another time you go through it through basara, basar. Nazar belongs to the imaginative faculty. Basar belongs to the intellectual faculty. What's the difference between the two? In Arabic, nadar is looking at the appearances of things. Okay? But basar is looking at the appearances and poking through back down to the presence and encompassing something. Yeah. A person who has simply a apparent understanding of what's happening reacts after things are occurring. They become reactionary. See? A person who understands trends and is able to see the oneness and the patterns in interactions is no longer reactionary. They can own the action. See that? Instead of being triggered to act, they can communicate and behave such that they actually encompass the other and hence trigger them to react. Let me give you an example with regards to the inner canvas and then one with the family canvas to get this point across. Salawat, please. I know that if I have this particular phone in my hand and I'm at the dinner table with my family, every ding that goes in that particular phone creates for me an alarm bell inside which tells me give attention here, and hence I take it away from there. When I know this trend about myself, right, as I'm approaching the dinner table, I'll accommodate for the occurrence of that particular distraction beforehand. So let me put the alarm, the airplane mode on before I go there. See that? If I simply don't know that, I'll react to the ding once it occurs on the table. Yeah. If I had done the muhasabah the night before and identified that one of the areas that causes me to paint the family canvas such that it doesn't fulfill the needs of those in that particular family, they feel like I belittled them. They're not valuable to me. And I've described that to myself as being emanated from the mismanagement of this box in my hand, this device in my hand. An individual with nadar, with only nadara, will go towards the next day in management of this. Only when something occurs, they react to that. Their plan of action will be when it says ding, then react and ignore it. An individual who has basara has a deeper insight. So a good translation would be sight and insight. When an individual has insight regarding their relationship with this particular device, they will base their interaction the next day in accordance to that. In moments which are essential, they can't afford a distraction, they'll place the phone on airplane mode, silent mode. You see that? We naturally do this sometimes. Imagine you're going to a meeting with someone that you can't have their phone go off, or God forbid the meeting would be not in your favor anymore. You see that? You identify and say, what are the potential risks, and let me go towards risks mitigations to get to that particular meeting's conclusion in a positive way. So when it comes time to showing up to a meeting at 3 a.m., I might put an alarm on my phone, say, I gotta wake up, can't be late for that meeting, it's with my boss. Yeah. Another time, I forget that there's another meeting with the boss of the boss at 3 a.m. that also requires an alarm to be set. Yeah. Nadara and Basara are two different things. The imaginative faculty, when it goes to make the needs of the shahwa faculty and the desire faculty and upbring them towards the point of transition, it meets them where they're at and only develops them apparently. It validates them and conforms with them. You're right to feel that you want to punch that guy. You're right. Oh, you should punch that. How dare they not going to punch that guy? You understand? Basara goes further and say, wait a second, that guy is your brother. You gotta see him tomorrow too, huh? The imaginative faculty only works up until the action, while the intellectual faculty transcends and goes beyond the action. In the family canvas, the imaginative faculty only deals with these kids as long as they're my kids, and forgets that at the point of transition, I was supposed to transition them as the next babas and mamas. The imaginative faculty says, let's deal with the problems of today, and will blame shift the problems of the next day to the responsible individuals that day. You understand? It says, my kids today, if I could give an iPad and quiet them down, if I can just let them and mitigate them now and not worry about the skills they require in the positions they're going to be in, it requires too much effort. Let me worry about them today. Not worry about the position I am to set them for today. See it? The imaginative faculty only caters to and brings the attention of an individual up until the action. When the action starts, the imaginative faculty's assessments stop. In the sociopolitical canvas, we see academics, historians, they assess and analyze atrocities and crimes of the past, and as soon as it gets to the present, their assessments stop. Understand? They'll write of the crimes that occurred to the native aboriginal individuals in this particular land and hold memorandums and memorials and bash those usurpers and rulers who committed genocide and atrocities back then. They will fund and motivate movements that will encapsulate entire countries and continents on that. But when it comes time to bringing attention to today, they'll say it's someone else's job to bring attention here, not mine. You see that? The faculties, both the imaginative and intellectual, are consistently at play in all three canvases, this day and every day. Salawat, please. In the family canvas, the imaginative faculty will make you focus on the what. The what brings you up until the point of the action. See? I gotta tell them they're wrong, huh? They messed up big time. I have to tell them that. And it'll focus on getting the what together very nicely. But it won't go further and say, wait a second, the reason I wanted to perform that action was to simply punish them or for reform to take place. If it was simply to punish them, then what is correct? I've hurt them enough. I feel good that I've hurt them. They too feel the pain I felt. You see that? The imaginative faculty assists in that capacity, in transferring pain. The intellectual faculty assists one in ensuring that there's sustained gain. Yeah. The imaginative faculty, salawat please. The imaginative faculty assists an individual in only looking up until the point of the action, making the person forget what the purpose of that action was to begin with. It swindles the anger into thinking that it was the owner of the journey and makes the anger forget that it had a purpose to serve another owner. Oh, anger, your job was not to simply do that which you want. You were the repellent forces that would repel dangers and risk away from your owner. Don't repel dangers from your owner in a way where they come back and hurt your owner further. If you punch this particular person today, tomorrow 2 punches come your way. Understand? The anger faculty needed to be pruned in an accordance and appropriate measure. In the inner canvas, we said that intrusive thoughts, negative thoughts, if they occur and a person beats down on themselves, then they have nothing but themselves to blame when slowly their capacity of expecting goodness and growth from them diminishes. You see? In the family canvas, if they consistently put down and gave generalized criticisms, they have none but themselves to blame when that canvas becomes so hot, it becomes a tanur that everyone wants to escape from. Some might escape towards an iPad, others might escape towards social media, some might escape by leaving the house entirely. The pursuer has to understand that in their unpruned pursuit, they cause the withdrawer to withdraw. The imaginative faculty and intellectual faculty are always and always in odds with one another. until and unless the imaginative faculty recognizes that it too can serve the other. Yeah. Salawat, please. In the inner canvas, we say to anger and desire, O anger and desire, be under the guardianship of the intellect, not under the guardianship of the imagination. The imagination will lead you towards what? The imagination will lead you towards an apparent access to your needs. It will validate you where you are, not grow you to where you need to be. It will say you're right to get angry. Why not? You've been tired and neglected this day. But it will not tell you that while having this weakness, you have to show up with responsibility. Can't display that any will, way, wish you like. The imaginative faculty, if your anger is under the guardianship of the imaginative faculty, that imaginative faculty will consistently validate where you are and not grow you, but rather transition you with your weaknesses. God forbid that our anger comes under the guardianship of the imaginative faculty, because then every transition of our anger will be unpruned, unrefined, always thinking it's validated the way it is. Because why? The imaginative faculty defined. You see? We go to the inner canvas and say, wake up, silly anger. Wake up, silly desire. Come under the guardianship of one who doesn't just see up until the action, but sees before and after that as well. When it comes time to Islam in the socio-political canvas, is it the case that the school of thought which says that Amirul Mu'mineen himself is after the Holy Prophet, are they simply saying that he's after him in terms of being liked? Or are they saying that he's after him in terms of being obeyed and followed? Is Amirul Mu'mineen the inheritor of the love and respect we have towards the Holy Prophet simply? Or is he the inheritor of the authority of the Holy Prophet as well? Qat'an would say he's the inheritor of the authority as well. You see it? Why? The intellect was responsible for making sure that it has the capacity for not only the point of intiqal, but after that as well, correct? Which other individual at the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen had the capacity to come and say, I know enough to guide all of existence, not only till their point of intiqal, but the hereafter, after as well. See? It's not only the worldly apparent capacity of Amir al-Mu'mineen that grants him this authority. It's not the case that he wielded Zulfiqar that we say that we follow him. It's not the case that he knew the answers of the problems today that we follow him. He came atop a member and said, what? I know the ways of another area better than I know the ways of here. You see that? Said, look towards the guardian and the guide that is showing you with capacity that they don't only know here, but they know what happens after as well. Consider you're a corporation and you have an advisor. And this advisor only tells you up until what to do, not what's going to happen when you do that. You'd fire that advisor pretty quickly. You understand? Go press the red button. Why? Because it looks kind of cool. I want to see what's going to happen once you do that. You see that? We saw the chaos that occurred on the global scale when foolish advisors came to fools and said, press the button, I want to see what happens. You see that? And after pressing the button, the begging starts, or the beating starts. You see that? Imagination only looks to validate your feelings, not grow you towards sustainable development. See it? It says gain, YOLO. You live only once, right? Gain as much as you can up until that point of transition, where the intellect comes and says, because you live only once, please make sure that either confirm there is nothing afterwards, or if there is, account for it. You see that? Salawat, please. We have a very similar scenario occurring in the family unit. We said that there are two positions. One is the representative of the Jamal of Allah, and the other is the representative of the Jalal of Allah. The responsibility of the Jamal was to cater to the specific needs of the family unit such that they have what? Safety, correct? Their job, their mandate, their department made sure that they were occupied with what happened after the journey, or making sure everybody was there till the journey in that example I gave you. Their job was to make sure everybody got into the car and the journey itself was one where they were safe. The positional authority of the majesty of Allah, the Jalal of Allah, was responsible for now what? Not only looking at the needs of the people inside the family up until the point of that journey, that trip they were taking, but rather the destination and afterwards too. The only way that's possible is if the consumption of attention of man is slightly less than lady in terms of the occurring current particulars of the needs happening right now. The emotional understanding and capacity isn't diminished as a deficiency in males. You see that? It's diminished as a positional, strategic item. You see that? It's not the case that the emotional capacity and intensities in mamas are increased out of lack of strategy and chaos. It's done so in a strategic and accountable way. One department was intensified in emotions and perceptions of them so they can ensure the safety of the family unit. You see it? The other was intensified in risk mitigation so they could sustain the collective development of the family unit. You see that? Salawat, please. Where does the swindle lie? You see, the one that was given less intensity in emotion, right, was given the capacity then to lift the weight of responsibility. Okay. And the other who was given more intensity in the emotion, right, was requested not to also add on top of that the weight of guardianship and responsibility. You see that? The swindler comes in and makes the mamas feel responsible for the positional responsibilities of the baba. Simply feeling responsible gets them halfway there towards burnout. Understand? Simply feeling responsible, a concept, gets them halfway there to the burnout. The swindler doesn't have to change much. You see, he's weak. He wants to hand out different rubrics, different frameworks of thought, so that those who follow those frameworks of thought naturally become agents of the swindler in every canvas they're painting. Understand? I'll open this point up further. Salawat, please. The intellectual faculty comes and tells every individual, please look at the system at play. If the owner ascribed two painters to this canvas, the owner does not have redundancy, nor does he make mistakes. The others not plan B. They're part of plan A. You see that? In the culture that follows the imagination, the Western culture, they got swindled into saying men versus women. Masculinity versus, they didn't call it femininity, they made a religion out of it. Feminism. You see that? Masculinism, if you will, versus feminism. Us versus you. This gender versus that particular gender. The imaginative faculty that guided this culture on the sociopolitical canvas came and told them opposites were supposed to collide. And in their collision, the stronger grows. And thus they created an opposition between the genders and made them collide. And in the collision of genders, they broke the family canvas. You see that? In the collision of genders, they ensured the instability, the lack of safety, the lack of collective growth of the family canvas. And by corroding and corrupting the unit, they ensured they corrupted the larger socio-political canvas. You see that? Salawat, please. Where Islam came and said, Aziz man, it was never about Jamal of Allah versus Jalal of Allah. To get to Allah, you could only get there when you understood that there's a oneness in the Jamal and the Jalal. It was never about one versus the other for destruction. You see that? It was one in support of the other in construction. You understand? One of you was responsible for the safety of the individuals in the house, and hence the owner gave you a sharp radar perception in understanding who's feeling off today. Yeah. Another was responsible for collective growth of this particular family unit, and I ensured that I gave their anger faculty a flare. I gave your shahwa faculty a flare, oh my Jamal, the lady, the mom. And I gave the anger faculty a flare, oh my Jalal, Baba. You understand? It wasn't so that you two fight one another and burn the painting to the ground. Don't be under the guardianship of the imagination. Because the imagination will lead you up until recognizing that you're different than the other. Where the intellect will come and tell you, you're right, I am different than the other. And my creator does not make a mistake. So I have to take a path, not the one I've taken so far, but another. You see? I have to look at the oneness between me and my spouse, both assigned to grow this. You see that? Those who get swindled by the imaginative faculty and come under its guardianship consistently look at differences in the family unit as points of opposition and conflict. They want to turn the other into themselves. If only you could think more like me, honey. If that was the case, we'd be in a lot of trouble. The owner does not make mistakes. The owned eye understands that I'm not the owner of the painting, nor am I the owner of the paint brushes in this painting. If the owner placed 2 paint brushes for this particular painting, I'm not allowed to throw one out. I'm not allowed to tell the other, you back off a little bit, let me paint. You see that? Understanding the oneness in genders is important, because when the imaginative faculty came and swindled the Western society, it said one gender, na'udhu billah. Where the reality is that the intellectual faculty comes and says the oneness in gender. You see that? Both of you appear differently. Both of you have responsibilities that appear differently. Both of you are different in the physical capacity, and thus, because of the relationship between hormones, different in the emotional capacity. And because of the relationship of emotions in cognitive understanding, different in the cognitive capacity. And because of the relationship of the cognitive capacity and the emotional capacities tied down to the very physiological material capacities, your growth, roles, and gender specific responsibilities must also be different. It was never a construct you should vote on. It was a reality you had to be attentive to. Salawat, please. Following the guardianship of the imaginative faculty broke the family units of this society. Just as following the guardianship of the imaginative faculty breaks the nafs of a person who's distraught with anger, or breaks the nafs of an individual distraught with shahwa, addictions. Yeah. You see that? Such that you could have a master painter, master tools. You see that? Yet no painting at all. Or worse, destructive paintings. In the sociopolitical canvas, we've been told something very important. When you're dealing with individuals who are within your team under the guardianship of the Holy Prophet, have mercy towards them. Look to their weaknesses as your weaknesses. You see that? look to their weaknesses as your weaknesses. If I thought I was a chunky monkey, would I say I'm a chunky monkey everywhere? Probably not. Yeah. And in looking to their weaknesses as your weaknesses, you cover their weaknesses in a unique way. That while covering it to the opposition, you reform it within. You see that? While not brandishing publicly that, look, I have a weight problem, you start controlling diet and exercise within. You see that? And their identity have been swindled. To what point? To the point where they say, we are no longer in the guardianship of Allah and those who claim to follow Allah as their primary identity. You see that? To those swindled swindlers, we're told to highlight their deficiencies. You see that? For in highlighting their deficiencies, that's the path of reform that they have chosen for themselves. You see? Imagine an individual wanting to jump off of a cliff. Okay? If they're a part of your team and you say, please come over here, don't go that way. If there's a connection of love and identity, simply requesting them to stay away, bringing their attention to the cliff is sufficient to prevent them from jumping off. One time, a person is not on your team. They consistently think you're out to swindle them. Yet, there you have to use your force and grapple them away from the cliff's edge. See that? In society where the corruption of it would lead to the corruption of its units, and the corruption of its units would lead to the corruption of the individual eyes, it becomes incumbent on each eye to ensure that my society, the society that they're dealing with, is pruned and adjusted. A neglect on the sociopolitical canvas is what caused the neglect in the family canvas here in this particular land we live in, which led to the neglect on the individual nafs canvas of this particular land too. And once that occurred, this genocidal maniacs that are happening in the world occurred. You see that? Salawat, please. This works two ways. One time, an individual becomes so corrupt inside, the poison within that cup in their heart is so explosive and so corrupt that when it comes out, it doesn't just destroy their nafs, doesn't just destroy their family, rather destroys public society. See that? You see that? They trumpet that particular particular corruption all over the place as far as the trumpet can blow. Understand? In a very similar manner, purity works as well. Where do we learn this from? We learn this from Karbala, from Abu Abdullah himself. One individual had purity in his nafs to a caliber unfathomably high. See that? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I made him the criteria of my judicial order. As the hadith says, Allah says, I visit him some days from my throne. The throne of Allah meaning what? The regulation and judicial authority of Allah in existence. That I made him the criterion. That's how pure he was. I didn't measure him with another. He became the measurement capacity. That's how pure he became. And Nafs became so pure that his family walked through the society which was riddled with filth and purified everywhere they went. You see that? A city that 3 generations of social engineering took place was brought to a almost revolution by simply the presence of the family in that particular city. 3 generations of social engineering, to the point where when Yazid is coming into power, Muawiyah tells him, make sure you send your armies out, but bring them back fast. You don't want their eyes to open to that which is outside. That's how much social engineering had been conducted on these people. See that? That even at the military capacity, whose job is to be vigilant outside, they were swindled there too with a unique lens. This pure family, painted by that pure nafs, was able to come to the city and bring that filthy city to a position of purity that they were about to revolt. It was not the case that Yazid let the Ahlul Bayt go out of mercy and kindness, na'udhu billah. He let the Ahlul Bayt go, for he had no chance but to let them go. In our socio-political canvas today too, every nafs should feel this responsibility. I am to purify myself not only to reform one canvas, but rather bring purity to all my canvases. And I have to work under the guardianship of what? The intellect, not the imagination. I have to work under the guardianship of those leaders, those scholars, those pious foundations, which not only look at the action up until the action, but orchestrate an entire movement after the action of their shahada. We have to bring ourselves under the guardianship of the intellect. Salawat, please. We see something quite unique in the battlefield of Karbala. You see, Aba Abdullah, consider the scenario, is in a battle against the enemy, bloodthirsty individuals. And in this particular battle, is it the position to go and request for something? The time for requesting is over. From the morning, companions have gone out to fight. From the morning, family members have gone out to fight. Now is no longer the time nor the place of requesting something from the enemy, an imaginative sense would say. Yeah. But the intellect of Aba Abdullah at that particular point, rather the intellect embodied Aba Abdullah himself at that particular point, goes and requests the enemy for something unique. There's an infant child in the camp of Aba Abdullah that's looking for water, that's thirsty. Aba Abdullah goes towards the enemy and requests for water for this infant child. One can say on the family canvas, a father sought no other way to allow for the sustainable growth of that child, but to request for water this day. One could say on the inner canvas, the pure nafs wanted to display that there is no purity in the opposition left at all. Alas and dismay. One could say the leader and guardian of the sociopolitical canvas wanted to present an argument none can deny till Qiyam of where right stood and where wrong stood, allowing for each human to stand on the right side of history wherever they may occur. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Please recite together. Assalamu ala al-Husayn wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn wa ala awlad al-Husayn وعلى أصحاب الحسين بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله. Alas, the night before when Qasim had asked our Mawla, will I be granted to drink from the illustrious waters of Shahada? Will I taste the sweetness more sweeter than honey? Aba Abdullah responds to him, O Qasim, even Asghar will taste from these waters. And Qasim, in utter shock, asks his master, will the enemy invade the tent? We, as humble servants before our master Qasim, say to him, O master, the thirst of the infant rose so high that his father and our master Imam brought the infant out to the fight, requesting the enemies to display any ounce of humanity, showing that the enemy no longer has a presence of humanity left, their empty shells just appearing to be human. Left in his hands but a body. He walks towards the tent as a father, as a husband, taking steps towards the tent of this child, for he had brought the child for a drop of water, but nothing but drops of blood remain in his hand. He's walking towards the tent, and his sister comes and helps him bury the child behind the tent. The narrations say the vile wolves didn't leave this child even there. They attacked the child even after the pillaging of the tents, for they were after the holy and blessed head to collect the rewards from their mal'oon commanders. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this qaleel ibadah from us. We ask Him to allow us to be consistently under the guardianship of His representatives, in the inner canvas under the guardianship of the intellect. In the family canvas, we pray He allows for the guardianship of the fathers to remain and be preserved. And on the sociopolitical canvas, we pray that He allows for the guardianship of the pure faqihs, the pure scholars who are close to His fiqh, His religion, that we remain under the guardianship of those pure ones who've purified themselves with His faith. Matam Hussein. Ya Hussein.